Five. I'm waiting for the window of the YouTube window of the window of the YouTube window. Stop. Bonus. Okay, audio works. Good. Just checking, you know. Okay. So, PowerShell 101. Hi, my name's Ken Maglio. One of the co-hosts, organizers for the user group now, because Mike wanted some help, so I helped. You're at Worldwide Technology. If you didn't know, hopefully you did. For the guys that work here, sorry, we didn't have a more fun venue today. Whatevs. So I've been doing PowerShell now for too many years. I can't think of how many. And before being a sysadmin for Worldwide now for about 4 years, I was a developer. So my backing in understanding scripting has been .NET for before .NET was .NET, and it was just VB and ASP. So got some decent background. I'm not the most knowledgeable guru of everything PowerShell, and even sometimes the basics elude me. Hopefully we'll go through them. This is not meant to be me preaching up here for an hour or more. It's meant to be ask questions, interactive. If you have a question, let's go over it. I don't have a ton of slides. I do have some, and then a demo, and then we actually play with what I go over. So the first thing around PowerShell, the topics we're going to cover is command discovery, the verb noun syntax, why it's important, and all these kinds of next, and then actually running commands. If we have time, hopefully we do, we will get into variables, types, pipelines, switch, string format, and some functions. I have a second presentation that covers this. If we get to it tonight, if we don't, we'll have another topic on that second presentation at some point. Oh, getting help. None of us like to, but yeah, basically RTFM, right? Read the fine printed manual, something. So in PowerShell, the easiest way to get help on a command is hit -help and then the name of the command. So this will give you all of the details of a PowerShell command. That PowerShell command, its intended purpose, parameters, it will give you examples, it'll give you details. So basically everything that you need to know for that command should be in help. Now, these are commands provided by Microsoft that come with PowerShell. They're probably documented pretty decently. If they are from a vendor or someone else has written them, good luck. Don't know how well they always do it. They should, but yes. So that leads you to believe help file, the help system is something that is user generated with these different commands, and it is. When we look at that portion of it, we'll see why some of this is not always filled out because it's not required. So some additional options that you can do, and as I told you, if you do get help, you get a slew of details here. However, some additional options if you just want to see how the heck do I use this command. So get content, for example, loads a file, or get child items is basically like a ls or a dr type of command. If I want to see how to utilize that, I can say get help, the name of the command, and dash examples, and that'll only pull up the examples. If I want to do other pieces apart, detailed and full, those are there as well. There's an option that's dash online, which last time I tried to use it is broke. It goes to pages that don't exist. And I don't know if that's because Microsoft moved their pages and stuff, but basically it's open the online help for this command. There's a much better website now. It's under the docs.microsoft.com/PowerShell. I have a link in here to it, so we'll see that as well if you want to look at online help. So These are some additional things. Linux guys, you might like these, looking at the more and the less commands. Yes, they are in PowerShell. Yes, they work kinda like your more, I mean, they're supposed to be somewhat familiar, not exact. But you can do the same thing here. The reasons why I point those out is that if you're having trouble consuming a large block of text that just scrolled by you, because usually these help statements are verbose, you can do something like this where you follow this syntax. More, every time you hit enter, it prints a new line. So it fills a page, you hit enter, 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 it just keeps going down the page. Less lets you use your keyboard, up, down, kind of to go up and down, kind of scroll. If you didn't have necessarily a mouse or the ability to do a scroll, use a scroll bar, like a scroll wheel on your mouse. So those are there to assist. Same thing, Control-C breaks out of those more or less commands if you do utilize them. How do you what? Well, that's coming next, I promise. So just a quick demo example. Hopefully you guys can kind of see this. It's an animation. But this is a quick example of how to utilize Get Help. We did Get Help on LS. So this is a huge scrolling wall of text. I'm just using my mouse wheel at this point to go back and forth between this content. There are different pieces and parts. You can see the examples detailed full online, the different pieces. So now we're going to look at examples, and it prints out again a wall of text of how to use this command. So again, these are just different things that you can look at of how to utilize and use some of those things that I just showed you. So on a quick side note, yeah, I know, man for the Linux guys, it does actually exist. So if you are more familiar with Linux-based systems and you're using PowerShell or potentially PowerShell Core, but PowerShell 6 coming, you can actually do man and the command, pretty much like Linux. To this one? Yeah. So basically, it's weird, it's not laid out the exact same way. But man is it's basically a replacement. So you can literally just type man, the name of the command, type it to more, type it to less, and it pretty much functions as you would expect. Not 100%. We still are in PowerShell. Still are in. We still, yeah, whatever. Speaking tonight. So an example of man on the same thing. It's pretty much the same thing. It's laid out just a little differently, but again, it's already more. So enter, 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 enter a bunch of different times. The switches that you would think would be there aren't there. You actually have to use PowerShell syntax. So you can't do, something, but basically piping it to less lets me use my mouse keys. Control-C, exits. So here's where I was telling you is this online link, the docs.microsoft. Keep in mind, I'll publish these slides. They're publicly available. You can go through them at any time. That is a clickable link. So if I do this, documentation. So if you're wondering online how to find something, this reference link is a great place to start. Basically, once you drill into reference and coming into core PowerShell, you've got a bunch of different items here and why conceptual. But if you actually open up the reference, here's all the different. Now, they give you the full namespace here. If you really don't know, you can search, but there are things that are here in PowerShell local accounts, or PowerShell management is a large one, like add computer, copy item. So this is the one that has PowerShell management is a very large and commonly used namespace in PowerShell. So a lot of your stuff is here. Like get content or get child item. So get content is like loading a file. Get child item is ls, dr, those types of commands. Well, those are aliases to that. So let's see if we can go back to my, oh Lord. Nope, because now we're in a tab. There we go. I don't know how to shift tabs. The other potential item that you have here is this. If you've never seen it. It's called Let Me Google For You. So when in doubt, Google. Now, I will tell you the way I have always been successful in finding what I need is some people will type full sentences out in Google and other things. That's not been the way that's worked well for me to find what I need. Again, utilizing search engines as an art. I've always found building my technology, then the next thing, and then what I want. Usually produces better results than a question. Or how do I do this in PowerShell? Doesn't usually work too well, at least in my experience. That's me. But I'm also really weird, and I use Bing more than I use Google, so that could be also different. Yeah, I know I'm weird, but you kind of would think the Microsoft stuff would be better for a Microsoft product. I found it is what is. Mileage may vary. So let's play. So the idea here now is I'm going to go ahead and open up a PowerShell window, and I'm going, oh, actually, I'm going to see, I thought, did I install it? Maybe I didn't here. Okay. So I'm going to go and do this, and what I'm going to try to do real quick is change my font so you guys can actually read the window. Better? Bigger? Bigger? I'll go a little bit bigger. Lord. Okay, super big. And we'll go over here. Good. Can we read? No? Are you okay? Sure? All right. So one of the things, if you type a bunch of stuff and you just want to get rid of stuff on the screen, clear is your friend here to get rid of everything on the screen and kind of just get a new buffer. It's still there. It's just hidden. So one of the things we'll take a look at is get help on a command. It's just a command that pretty much everybody knows, dir, ls, same thing. Now, yes. So this is one of these things is that PowerShell tries to keep a current copy of all of its documentation. So I haven't done get help on this system. I did it. I had nowhere. And so now it's grabbing all of that help from online and pulling it local. PowerShell will do this, especially if there's bigger version updates. Like I just updated to Creator Edition 1703 for Windows 10, and I get a new everything. So I have to download the help. So that's what it's doing right now. So this may be an experience you hit as well. So I want to show you that you actually do want to do this when it does hit your system. So yeah, usually you only go through it once, or if there's a big update to PowerShell, you upgrade a new version, you might need to get the new help docs. So, no. For people online? Okay, not a problem. No. Well, and I should be doing this too. I completely forgot about this thing. I do, but it doesn't go to my PC. That would be awesome if it did. I think that, yeah, that's louder. Shit. Yeah, anyway. Like I probably needed it in the first place. So while this is going, and it's figuring out what it's going to do, not what I wanted to do, but I do want to show that. Okay. So while it's figuring out help, let's see if I can do, there we go. So this is the idea of get help and showing the details of a command. So ls, a common command that we use quite often, dir, same thing, there's aliases. What it's going to do is show me the actual command that is being run underneath the hood. So as you type the old DOS commands, it's actually executing PowerShell and running this command. It's an alias. So at this point, we can see that there's quite a few different attributes and commands that we can put here in our get child item. This is what we utilize a lot of the times in PowerShell to traverse a file system recursively, to get a list of files, basically, and output that into a variable. We can loop over that. Hey, I want to rename a whole bunch of files. This is where I could utilize this command and get a directory listing of all of them and utilize it in that sense. So there we go. To get the examples of how this can be used, I just use the examples. It's at the bottom there, sorry. But I can use the examples, and now I have this huge long scrolling way to do this. But basically, I can utilize this, and we can see, for example, this example number 7 to get all the logs and include only text files, but exclude anything that starts with A. So that is a way that we can filter the way that this command works. So pretty helpful to understand how those pieces and parts work. The examples are here to allow you to understand how to utilize those. This is really loud. There. So, so those are things that are allowing us to utilize this help better, right? The examples help us understand what this command is capable of. Also, playing with things is another great way. Try it. Hopefully you don't break too much stuff. All right. On just this command is, we're going to move to command discovery next, but on help, does everybody kind of understand it? Are there any questions around help? Yeah, Mike. So the question was, I want to be able to see the help, but I don't want it in the buffer, meaning scrolling off the screen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Show window? Yep. So in Windows, if you've got the GUI option, you've got this particular way to show it without showing it on the screen itself. So yeah, that looks almost like the other one. Well, we're getting there. There we go. So basically, the output of this. Wonder, can I? Okay, that's just the search box. So, yes. Yes, it does. As it has the scroll bar down here anyway, so yes, that would be the. So that is yet another option there. Again, I never do that, so thank you, Mr. Mike, for showing us the show window option. See, even I learned. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. And the next thing is finding commands. So basically the first thing that you're going to do is kind of struggle trying to find a command to do something. And I'm not going to be to tell you the first one that the naming of these commands is going to make sense, that you're like, oh, I can find that command exactly what I want. There's some options to help, and we'll go through a couple of them, but there is a get command. Given you know the name of the command or a piece of a command. So a good one in this particular case might be service. I know I want to do something with a service. So I might use get command star service star or something like that, right? Or star service. And it will find all of the commands that exist that don't that have star or service in the name, right? So star is our wild card. That's one way we can do it. We can also say, look, I want all of the get options, so all of the commands that just return me data, not anything to change anything. But this is one way to list all of those as well. So the additional options down here are to help us specify, again, pieces, as long as we know how the syntax of PowerShell is set up with the verb noun syntax. And we'll get into that in the next part of why it's important, but this is also important of why you should name, if you start building PowerShell commands, why this is important. You don't have to, and certain pieces and parts of PowerShell will complain. They won't fail, they just won't complain. They'll just complain, but then it won't be indexable if you say, hey, I want to find every place where the noun is service, right? That's another way I can search. There's a couple of other things here too that we'll look at here in some of these examples, like show command info, parameter name, and syntax, that can help if you know what you're doing. Mr. Mike. Yes. So now the question was, can I explain nouns and verbs in the context of PowerShell? So first, let me start with verbs. The syntax and the way that everything is described in PowerShell is typically verb-noun. And the way some of that works is that most of your commands that you want to go do something with, get. So in that potential sense, we're going to have the ability for me to go get something. There is a list of verbs that PowerShell accepts. You can't just say scratch dash my back. It's not going to know what scratch is. There are approved verbs that PowerShell uses that you should use, again, so it understands how to find them. So in those particular cases, those are going to be certain actions that you're going to take. They describe the action that you're about to go take, whether it's get, start, restart. They all should be named the same. So if you're looking to do something in a command from a vendor or something else where you need to do something, like start something or reset something, those should be the verbs that you're looking for. They should be static as far as the types. There's a way to list them so that you can see what they are. There's choices that vendors and other people make when they make them that may not make too much sense. Like some of them just use invoke all the time, which doesn't yet know. Nouns, on the other hand, are going to be obviously what you're doing. You're taking the action against, right? So in this case, start dash service dash service, restart dash service. So again, that's the object that you're usually going to be focusing on with your command.
I just want to add to that. I posted the approved verbs.
Okay.
Part of the benefit of doing this is that you should be able to pick up anybody's module and use it without knowing, like, because they all have specific meanings that are listed out on that page. If it says reset, that does a specific thing that is not the same as restart.
Yes. So just so people can hear on the stream, so Mike was saying he posted this, some links into the meetup and onto the YouTube around if, you know, the definitions of those, the approved verbs and what they do. So if you pick up a module that's from another vendor, right, or somebody's written, you shouldn't expect the start service to reset the service. Those are names, they do exactly what they say, and as eventually authors, potentially, of PowerShell, you should write your commands the same. So obviously this is the basics, but obviously as you guys learn more, you could be writing these commands as well. So you don't want to go into it and write something that, you know, says start and it actually bounces a whole system. That'd be bad. We'd probably all shoot you and tell you to go do something. So let's take a look at some of these, just a quick example here of our get command. Get star, and it's going to post all of the different get commands. It's going to as well do those things with write as well. And it's also going to show you the different types here on the left-hand side. Do you have to be concerned with them? No, you don't really. However, you can see that it will list most things, alias, function, those types of things. Again, we're now looking at something like get command verb get. So again, the same type of thing. Instead of get star, we're now telling it, I want you to find me everything that has a get in the verb. Same basic concept here. And set, same type of thing. It's going to list the same types of commands. So one of the other things here is we're going to now look for any commands that have the word process in the noun. So that is what I found. Now, if it was process something, 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 it wouldn't have been found, and it was an exact match. Whatever's after the dash, that's what it found. The same thing with service. So one of the other things that we can do is we can get just a command, but we can also show the command info. So why is that particularly helpful? It shows you a couple of different things. Again, some definitions, the parameter sets. A lot of this is in help, but sometimes the information in here can be more helpful. The module name, some types of those details. Also the syntaxes of those. So again, it's kind of like the examples. It's just additional information once you get down to the command name itself. And the same thing here for right host. And just kind of seeing what right host has here as well. Now, in this case, I see that right host has a command called no new line. That's a parameter to this function. Maybe I want to see all other functions that have that same no new line parameter. And there we go. There's a list of all of those that have no new line. So those are just, again, some examples of how we can use that, and we'll go into. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, so the question is, can I look at things that are other than PowerShell? And the answer to that is yes, it will pick up those additional things. So if I do, for example, I'm going to try to pick up, let's see, get command, and I'm going to try write. I think, yes, okay. So down here at the very bottom, there's two actual executables that are in my path that PowerShell knows about just environment variable-wise. See, one of them is sitting here in Windows, System 32 write, and the other one's just System Windows. This is called write. So you will be able to find applications that are in there. So if you're looking for a particular command and if it's in your path, you can see it at that particular way to see if it's loaded, if it's available. So a lot of times you'll install a new application. It's like, I don't know what Git is. And you're like, why? Git command, Git. No. So again, it could be that it's not into the environment variables. So that might be a way that you can reverse and take a look at those things. There is one, which is command type. And this is what Mr. Lombardi is probably referring to is once I get good at understanding what these mean, functions versus commandlets versus applications, I can use command type as well. So I could say, find me all the applications on my, holy hell, on my list. Everything in my path that it would know how to execute if I just, I'm not going to type in WS reset, that would be bad. But, and game sit, that's like Xbox, I don't know. Yeah, Xbox Live, game save task. Yeah, I'll just execute that, that'll work. No. So these are available to be able to find not only the PowerShell commands, but also actual executables that are in your path. Because as we all know, PowerShell is just a heightened command prompt. So if you need to execute something, you can and shell to it. Sir?
Follow-up question. What's that number?
What's that number to the right? That would be the version of the executable, good sir. So if I can do this and pipe it to, or is your header. So there's the version of that particular executable / assembly. If you were to go look at it, you would be able to see that that is the version of that executable on the disk. And I'm going to hit Control-C, so I don't have to go through all that. So in this case, if I want to do git command type application, and I just said git, I can see I actually have my git commands available here as application. So in this case, I could say git GUI. And not that that's super helpful, but it's the git GUI. So that is one of the options there to be able to pull stuff back and forth from git command. Now, again, does this help you know exactly what you need to do? Like, hey, I need this. No, you're going to have to do some hunting and pecking, I hate to say. You're not going to know miraculously by using this command exactly what every command does and be able to get to it. You'll have to have some Google foo or Bing foo around, or the Bingles, and go and actually, you know, try to figure out what other people are using for it. Not everybody is right in the way they use the commands on the internet. Just saying, okay, be careful. You're like, what the hell are you doing that for? And then somebody will be like, why don't you just use this? And they're like, oh, ... So, again, there's our basic command, finding our commands. Again, it's a good way to search for them. Internets is another. Any other questions? No? Michael, yes, sir? You could. So you could do that. You want to be careful of doing that, because if I do this right now, or even, you know, this, be careful of piping this result, right? But if I did get down to a single command, I could get that command and pipe it to help. If I needed a couple of them, I could do that as well. You could do this, and you could potentially take the output of that and actually then pipe that to a file. And so we'll talk about that if we have time on the second presentation, doing pipelines and actually taking one command to the next, to the next. You could do that where you're like, man, I need this out. I want to be able to print this. I want 5 of these different commands so I can have them. You can do that. Just takes a little bit of effort. Like everything, nothing's easy. You got to work for it. All right, and clear. If I can type, and back to our lovely PowerPoint. Oh, grammar matters. So this is going to build just a little bit on our right. So this is the difference between like having really good PowerShell and being able to reference it and utilize it later. Because as we start to write things, your first iteration, you're like, I want to do cool stuff, or hello world, right? But that's not great. So it's really simple. It's a good habit to start. So don't use more than one dash. There are people who think you can, and PowerShell will still bitch at you. I don't know why they do, but they do. So verb noun is the syntax, as we went over before. This sets up PowerShell to be able to index, scan, find it in commands, find it for help. So just don't use any more than one dash, okay? And get verb is your friend. So why is get verb your friend? Because this is what Mr. Lombardi probably posted. Here is all of the approved verbs, not in alphabetical order. They're in group order. Whatever, I don't. So add clear. I'm not going to list all these. And awesome, it's off the side of the page there. How about that? That better? So these are all of the verbs that you can use, and there's a list, and You can utilize these. If your command doesn't fit within them, you're probably not thinking about how people are going to use your command the right way. So you should probably look at the definitions. You might want to call it something cool, but what it actually does is probably already defined. Put it this way, Windows wrote, how many are there up to now? Commands in Windows PowerShell, like 3,000 plus commands, 2,800, and all of them fit in this naming standard. So it works. It's not everything you would think always, but it does work. Back to Power. So again, those are just examples down below. Now, if you want to name your function or your command something really cool or shorthand, you can make an alias for it, and you can do that later on. It's an advanced thing, but like if you want to make, you know, like get child item has ls and dir, you can do that. Okay, aliases don't have to be following the noun, the verb noun connotation. They can be whatever. My cool function. So does it really matter? Beginners, nope, doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it. However, beyond that, once you're beyond just beginning, yeah, it does. When you start writing things, a function, a commandlet, yes, it matters. If you're just getting started, ignore this for right now. Other than the fact that this is how things are going to be produced for you, and you need to understand it from a consumption model. From a writing model, you're not there yet if you're just starting. So ignore it. So that's what this whole slide is for. And we kind of played a little bit already, but there's a couple of commands that, like, okay, so get my cool stuff written bad. Okay, so get my, nope, bad. So again, unless I'm building a module, I'm not going to have PowerShell bitch at me. I don't have a function built to show that. But it will actually say, hey, there are some unapproved verbs and everything that you have here. Are you really sure that you want to load all of these? And actually, I lied. Oh. UI Windows. Where would be my, oh, yeah. I'm getting there, I promise. It's a little bit of, modules, extend, import, module, WWT, exchange. Oh, we fixed it. Yay! Something. All right, so apparently we fixed this module, unless it's some other module, which it could be. It could be, Now, okay, so apparently we fixed it in one of our latest revisions, so that's a good thing. One of these was constantly complaining that there was a command in it that it was like, you have a command that I don't understand and it's not going to show up correctly, so beware, but I still loaded it. So it basically complains and says it's not discoverable. So, all right. Back to our slide. Any questions on verb, noun, noun, verb? Okay. And running commands. So, yeah, hi. PowerShell command, Control C, Control V, it kind of. Sometimes it's highlight, enter, and then sometimes it's right click. It depends on your window. So do be careful of, like, you go around like right clicking stuff and all of a sudden you like pasted the whole web page you just copied everything from and deleted your whole, I don't know, Active Directory. Just be careful. Right clicks do happen. So running commands, where do we run them? We run them from PowerShell, from our command line. We run them from ISE. If you don't know what the ISE is, we'll show you. The ISE is the integrated something environment. Scripting. Yeah, I couldn't think of scripting. Sorry. I was thinking IDE the whole time. So not yet, no. So integrated scripting environment, which at this point isn't really, anyway. So, and then we have Visual Studio Code. Smiley face. Like, Visual Studio Code is the new ISE. Like, install it on your servers. I don't care. No, although not really. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Michael's like, gosh, don't tell the beginners that. So no, the ISE is on most systems, that servers, those types of things. So if you do need an environment, it is there. Visual Studio Code obviously is on your workstation, but it will allow you much greater functionality than the ISE. There was some power tools for the ISE developed, which are kind of interesting because it's not really meant to be extended, but it was. I never really utilized them much because by the time I got to looking at that, VS Code was out, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. So some differences here, some things to note about things that'll bite you in the butt if you start running commands from a server in the ISE versus right-click, run as PowerShell, or navigating them and running them from the command line. So PowerShell commands run, you can run commands directly, correct? ISE is an integrated host and console. So you've got a different experience, and there's actually some different properties that are loaded when you're in the ISE. There are certain things you cannot do when you're in the ISE that you can do when you are in PowerShell. Some of those are more for displaying and output, but they do exist. For example, you can read keys from the host, not exactly the best way, but like, press any key to continue type of deal. Doesn't work in the ISE, but it works in PowerShell. So there's some things like that, just for an example. PowerShell, obviously, you can run script files by dot sourcing them, as you can see. That's the way you would run a script if somebody developed a script. I don't like when people develop scripts. I like when people develop functions, but that's me. So on the second thing, right-click run with PowerShell. Sorry, POSH, if you don't know, is short for PowerShell. So you'll see POSH a ton. And there is tab completion in PowerShell as well. So if it is aware, if it is loaded, it will understand the arguments. Potentially, if the arguments have validation sets, kind of like set execution policy. If all of you guys have run into that, if you haven't, we'll go over that. But it knows about the parameters after execution policy, the different types. So tab completion works still in PowerShell. Host interaction is primarily text, and you can schedule PowerShell via task scheduler pretty simply. Basically, however you would run your PowerShell from a command line, you can pretty much take that and just put it right into a task scheduler. There's a couple extra things you probably want to do, but that's heavily documented. But that's all good things with PowerShell. ISE, you're not going to schedule things to run in the ISE. It's different. It's a scripting environment for you to debug, which is great. That's what it excels at. It has command lookup. So if you're looking for commands and you don't want to type, it is on the right-hand side of the ISE. For example, if I open up the ISE, now mine doesn't have it because I've closed it down a bajillion times. But if I show the command add-on, this is how it comes de facto from the factory. And as you increase, you get all of the loaded commands that are in your current environment. So because I loaded up a couple of things here from Active Directory, you can see I have a couple of AD commands. Add AD group member. Yay, fun times. So that is the command bar. This is the ISE. Again, it does give you very good debugging control, so the ability to step through your script one line at a time, or let it run until a certain point. You can put a break point there, so we can take a look at that if you guys need to. Again, tabbed interface, you can upload multiple scripts, save them, tab completion, and again, the host interaction has a lot more GUI elements. Meaning if you actually prompt a user for a choice, it's not a textual choice that you would see in PowerShell. The UI is different. It pops up a dialog box and you get to pick buttons instead of picking numbers. It's different, or letters, or whatever it may be, options. Prompting a user for input pops up a input box, not text. And progress bars are actually shown in graphical form, not like you saw when I was doing all of the updates where it puts it at the top of the screen as text. So again, it's just another level. It's trying to bring you to give you a better experience developing, but you don't want to do all of your running out of, I said, ISE. You might experience different outputs. So that is the end of the presentation that I have for the basics, the stuff I said we will definitely cover. Do you guys have any questions at this point? Because then we're going to get into the little next presentation. Nope. Okay. Onward. There we go. How the heck do I get out of this? Oh, I always forget. Escape? Yeah, there we are. All right. And then I think I go over here and we'll go to this one and we'll start this presentation. There we go. Start. So beyond the basics, some of the things that I'm going to cover in this is the top 10 commandlets, at least in my opinion. Mileage is going to vary. It's hard to do top 10. I randomly picked some things that I thought people would use the most. We're going to look at types and typing, and then MagDev favorites. That's me, MagDev Studios. That's just my fun name for shit. So whatever. We'll take a look at some of those favorites because there's things that even Michael's probably going to shake his head at me for. But they're amazing. He's like, I don't want to know. So top 10 commands every admin should know. Get help. I think we covered this, but kind of the #1 command. Set execution policy. Raise a hand. Do we know what set execution policy does? So, by default on a system, when you first install Windows or doesn't matter, server or workstation, Microsoft has locked down PowerShell from running scripts that aren't trusted. It is not a security feature. It is security by obfuscation, because you can get around it in a bajillion different ways. And pretty much every time you schedule a script to run in a task scheduler, you bypass it. It doesn't matter on the system. It's just a default setting to protect you, for the most part, out of the box. Like if you're an admin and on a server, IE's enhanced security thing where it like blocks you from downloading every script, every file from every site. Basically the same thing. You can turn it off. It's basically just a way to say, hey, if I download something from the internet that's not like just from whatever, Stack Overflow, I'm not going to let you run it. Not by default. You actually have to tell me otherwise. Yeah, fine, let it through. Sir. Yes. So no, vendor will. It's because, well, so the default policy is that if it is code signed with a server, right? So if it is code signed, it will run as by default. However, if you develop your own scripts or you grab a script off of a website, by default, it will not run. And it will tell you a very nasty message that says, hey, execution policy is not set, or it doesn't allow it to be run, and it will stop. Text, wall text. And you're like, yeah, set execution policy. And for the most part, I will never tell you to set things to all trusted or unrestricted. Yeah, like no, no. Remote signed probably is the better option. And if you look at any standard compliance security documentation, it's going to be remote signed at a minimum. Again, it's not going to prevent it, and there are 15 different ways around it. It's not really security. It's just a, are you sure you really want to run this type of thing? There's a set and a get. Mr. Patel. Yes. So what you're changing when you do a set execution policy is you're changing a registry set. But we'll actually complain and actually say you don't have access to. Call your admins? No. Yes. Huh? Yes. Yes. Right.
It's one of those things that I'm very PowerShell, very Windows. And
Yeah.
I develop this, I get this execution policy, like, oh, I'll just change that as a simple command line.
Yep.
And probably go, you can't have admin, but you hired me to do this job that requires me to have admin.
Well, so it only requires admin to execute that command.
Right.
So you could have, so somebody could temporarily log into your box and run the PowerShell window in a heightened elevated prompt as your user, and then you could run it and then get out of it and you'd be okay. It would set it. However, just recently as today, for example, the new SharePoint Online for O365 has a management shell. It's based in PowerShell. However, that is a completely different registry setting. So try and execute, even though it's still PowerShell, beyond to me why you have to set execution policy in that shell versus PowerShell shell. It's stupid the way they built it. Exactly. I sighed. I'm like, why? But we had to, twice. Stupid. Yes. Yeah. So, yep. So the question was, what's the persistence of this just for people on the line? And it very much depends on how you run it. If you run it out of the box, it just says set execution policy, remote only, it's for the machine. Yes, sir. Hey, look at that. I'm going to close that one. I'm going to get, so get help wall set. So one, here are, if we look at the very top, are different policies that we can set. Execution policy, unrestricted, remotes, unrestricted is let everything. We don't care. I don't recommend that. Remote sign, unless it's like your own personal machine and you just don't care and you don't ever want to be hindered by this, then go ahead. Remote signed, all signed, restricted, default. By undefined. Never. Is it? Yeah, it is. Bypass and then undefined. I was like, what? But so bypass and undefined. So there is a time where you're executing a script and you want to get around execution policy and you have the rights. You can actually say set execution policy bypass, and it does it. And you're like, what? Why? Our good friend Rod Reynolds over at Chocolatey, this is how he installs Choco. He just says, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to bypass it. And it's perfectly fine. It works, it's there. Again, not security, it's just an annoyance. And then there's the scope options. Process, current user, local machine, user policy, and machine policy. So you can define it all the way down into group policy as well. And that's actually what we do. This setting is set on all of our servers through group policy. So we don't have to worry about it on our servers. You can bypass it and you can set it to something more restrictive and it won't complain. Less restrictive, So if I go onto a machine right now, a server that we have that's set to remote signed, even though I'm an admin and I go to try to change it to unrestricted, it'll complain and say, you're trying to set this to something lower than what's already defined. No. Because again, it's not security, so they probably don't really care. There are ways to digitally sign your code. I've never, ever seen, thousands. Well, actually, no. It is. I found Komodo, a couple $100, $200-300 now. Yeah, but it's Komodo. Anyway, still. And that's a pain in the butt. Every version you have to read. Just don't. Oh, there is, I did not document it. If you download a file, even if it's on your local intranet and it's not trusted, sometimes you still run into this. You're like, why am I still getting this? It's a file on servers I trust. There's a, what is it called? Help me. What? Nope, not the unblock. That is a good tip. But in the file itself, the file descriptor, there's a location code in the file descriptor, and you have to open the file up in a funny way using Notepad to get to this location code. And the location code is stuck in the file forever. You cannot change it. So if you downloaded it from the internet and it was untrusted, when you downloaded it, it will remain untrusted, regardless of your setting. So even if you adjust your setting to allow remote signed or certain other things, it sticks. Open up the file, copy the contents into a new file that's local on the machine and paste it. You're done. I've run into this problem on a couple of times where the policy was one thing, downloaded a file, changed it, and it was still stuck because the file descriptor itself was downloaded from an untrusted site. So watch, it's a weird thing in Windows when you download a file, it's a hidden attribute of a file. I'll have to find that and I can post it in our meetup. But it's something that's bitten me before where I've had to sit there and do it over and over. Like, why is this not working? Why is this not working? And then realized, copy, paste, and do new file, and it works. And it's because of that stupid location code. I forget what it is. I have to get to it right off the top of my head, but it is there. Kind of advanced. It's a interesting case, but it's there. So, number 3, get back to this. Pipe, another favorite thing. It's not really a command, but it's kind of a command. It's new for Windows people. We never used to really use pipe that much. I mean, I get it kind of with command line bash scripting, but pipe. So literally, it takes the output from one command and sends it to the next. Be careful. This is a form of iteration. So if the reason I say it's a form of iteration is depending on where you put that pipe and the commands before and after it, you're either going to be sending an iterative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to it, or you're sending the block to it. Again, it's kind of like a for each. PowerShell commands have a good way to handle blocks of code, return objects, an array of things that you're returning. Like if I say get child items and delete, if I say get all child items, pipe delete, for each child item, I'm going to go delete, 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 delete. So that's why it's not just delete everything, instantly done. It's iterative. So you be careful because that bit me on the butt one time when I was like, why isn't this working? And it's because it was iterating. Service, stupid helpful. Stop, start, restart. I don't have to open up the services MMC. I can just type get service Jen for Jenkins, and then I can type that to restart service. So super helpful. Get service, pipe it to any of the other actions. Every service that's named HP, kill it. The 15 Chrome windows you have, kill it. Java scheduler that annoys all of us, kill it. The stupid update service. The process, kind of the same thing. Process is running on the box. Another great way to see what's running. Get, stop. Stop is pretty much kill. They don't have a kill verb, so they had to use stop. Yes, stop. So if it can't shut it down gracefully, you'll have to force, and that'll be your like kill. What's the limit? Kill 9. Yeah, that. Export CSV. This is a favorite command until I learned about something else. I think it's in here. I think. But this is a favorite command. However, it's a pain in the butt command too. The reason is, by default, it's going to export type information into your Excel file, which you never ever want. I don't know why they did that, but they did, and I understand why. Is it in 6? They stopped doing that? So export CSV is great if you want to get a report that you literally want to open up in Excel. However, half the time on most systems, it doesn't open up in Excel, right? It opens up in God. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, the way you think it would work as a CSV. For getting data out and putting it over here to another system, this was a favorite command. It still is, it still works. However, I found something much better. And we'll get to that, hopefully. I think I have it as my commands. It's not really a command, it's a theme. So that's why I might not have listed it. Get event log. I don't know how many of you have servers where you open up the event log and then you go get a cup of coffee because it takes 5 minutes to load the damn application log. Because there's, you know, like 350,000 events in the application log in Windows. Use this, it'll be easier. There's all kinds of arguments for it. Works well. Or, hey, even better, there's things where you can actually schedule this and look for events and actually do stuff based upon it, like in a task scheduler. So task scheduler already kind of has this, that it can pull events that look at the event log and fire off a task schedule, but this works quite well. Where object and select object. So now I have a lot of stuff that I get returned, like get help everything, and then I want to filter. So maybe I don't have in a command the ability to filter like I want to out of the gates. Or I have to filter based upon the data contained in each object. The way I can do that is utilizing where. The way where works, we'll not use the ISE. We'll go to a little demo quickly here. Does that work? Yeah, hey, look at that. Oh. So, cool. Yeah. So, if I type get AD user Maglio, okay, that's me. Yeah, you have my SID. Whatever, I don't care. So, if I take a look at this, this is the way I can get a particular item. If I were also to do something like get child item, and I could just say path is d:\\. Here's all of those items. Now, maybe I don't have a great way to filter it here, but maybe what I want to be able to do, and I can use this to pipe all of these iteratively to the next command, where, now here's the fun part. If you've never seen iteration in PowerShell, this is your first foray into what the hell is this? Yes, sir. Yes. So I was getting there. Shush. So what the hell is $_? $_ is a shorthand. You'll see a crap ton of people use it. What it actually is $PS item, as Mr. Lombardi has said. What this is saying for each item as I get into this where clause. So again, remember this iteration is a pipe. So I'm taking all of those results, putting it into this where clause one at a time, big for loop. So that PS item, or this funny notation, is the next item. So if I were to just do this, we're going to see literally no difference, because all I'm doing is outputting that object to the screen. However, if I do something like this and I can say just the name, yes. So you're correct. I'm thinking of for loop. Sorry. So, and where I've got name, and I could say name contains videos. How about I put that in ticks? So there are a bunch of different matches with PowerShell. Don't get screwed up in thinking greater. So if I were to, I'm just saying for commands, this is a no. It's like bash. So I hate to say that's where it came from, but it is. This would be greater than, less than, or equal, not equal, equal. So again, it's not what you would think. I hate this part of PowerShell, but it's me because I was a dev, and this is equals. This is greater than or equals. So that's something that I always get wrong, and invariably I will do this, and it doesn't work, and I'm like, why doesn't it work? So there are other things like is another option here. I could do and I could say vid. So I can do this. So I can do something like that. There is regex matching, but it's weird. It doesn't really work how you think it work. The match command. It does, but then you have to use matches. Agreed. But what I'm saying is you have to use the object matches, don't you? Or will it actually work in where correctly? Okay. Okay. So in where clause, maybe in other places where I go to utilize regex and I use this, it'd be like and match, and then you have to use matches to get the matches. So in this case, for the filter, and I'm going to get this out of the way because I'm out of mine. So in this case, basically, our where clause will be able to filter our results. This is something that you'll utilize over and over and over again. It really does help. So, yes. Yes. So on object, anytime you're executing additional PowerShell commands, you're going to be inside of a script block. And the script block, in this case, is what's here. So if you're writing PowerShell code continued on after a statement, like where or for, you're writing more PowerShell, so therefore it's a script block. Also, get help will tell you. Other statements that are more select, you're not writing PowerShell, you're telling it parameters to that function. So it's the difference between executing command and having additional code and a script block that's running against that result versus parameters to a function. So where, for each object, all are going to be curly braces for the most part. Other than that, invoke command uses script, but it literally says -script for a script block. So if you wrote the rest of this in a variable and typed it here, it would also work. But it's basically you're running additional code to function as opposed to parameters to the where clause. Because this could be huge. It doesn't have to be just this. It can be ancillary. But if we did a get help on where, Lord help, that was one row more. There we go. So in this particular case, you can do different permutations of where object property string value this, and then where object filter script block. Script blocks are always curly brackets, and that's what we're using in this particular case. So it depends on how you use it. There are ways to say where object name dash value this. That syntax is a little more verbose potentially. I don't see a ton of people using it in the community, so it's better to look at something like the script blocks. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, good question. How do you find everything you can filter on? So this is where ISE is my best friend. But Mr. Well, on a server, it's my best friend. Visual Studio is my best friend. What? All right, tell me. On what? To which? If I, well, hold on. So if I have this, what do you want me to run get member on? Every iteration that I go through? So here? But that's going to do it for each one. There's a dash. Okay, so we haven't talked about get member, but it's here. So there's a bunch of stuff. Hold on, get member. So if you're doing something like this, you can definitely go and pull out the select first here. This is another option. Where's my other? So select was the second command here. So this is definitely a use case of select. And this is also something that can go back to my other example here. Get AD, user, Maglio, K, property, everything. Holy hell. That's a shit ton of things. I don't need the shit ton of things. I need select, name, and I don't know, one of these things up here, UPN. There we go. Name. And I think it's display name actually. Huh?
You're only going to get a default number of properties.
Yes.
If you want those additional properties, that's fine.
Yes. So a good example is member of. If you want to see all the groups that I'm a member of, you will not get that by default. It only returns like 5 or 6 properties. So that's all. Yep. Yep. So if I wanted to pull out something that wasn't here, like, meh, not there. So, see you guys. Thanks. So that is one of those things that is just one of those AD commands because there's so many damn properties, and you saw it was a wall of text when I did that and whatever that is. I think that's my picture in United. Yeah, and then there's some blob in here too for my picture. Yeah, if I do this, my AD is going to go and scream. What? However, wait. So get AD object, right? Oh, whoops. Do I have to filter? Do I have to? Yeah. No. So yes. Now here's the thing: is that at some point here, I'm going to hit stop. Now. Yeah. So at the same time, when this runs, there is a max return set. I believe it is 1,000, and that's it. You have to set result size equals max. Control C. Typical break for Windows is Control C. Control C will stop just about anything. If not, close the window. Correct. If you spawned up 15 PowerShell jobs, you're screwed. Which you haven't gotten at PowerShell jobs. So The other possibility, so utilizing select in the case where we wanted to see those properties. No, I didn't get member. Only because it's kind of advanced. I don't necessarily know that every admin needs to know it. It is super helpful, but it is, but I've known a lot of guys that still navigate PowerShell really well without ever knowing a get member. But again, I use get member. I love get member. Get member is super helpful. We'll look at get member as the 11th item here quickly. So for each X and Y and for each object. The for command is the very rough, so I need to define X, no I don't. $X equals 0, while X is less than, this is where I screw up and I do this, less than and increment X. Does anybody know what plus plus? Do we get plus plus? Yeah, no space. Huh? Exactly. Like, how weird of things to choose. So, oops. So, 0 through 9 is, yeah, 10. So this is the old traditional for loop. Where this comes into handy is when iteration doesn't work well. There's not a lot of times in PowerShell because you're in managed code and everything's kind of an object or something. But there are times where you do need to use it. The other one, we'll do this old good one. Get child item. So if I say get child item D, I have all those, right? I'm going to set this to folders. Then I have a variable called folders. That is the output of all of that, right? So folders equals this. So if I want to loop over each folder, I can now say for $folder in folders. Folder. Oh, wait, sorry. For each. Right? Same output. Because now, again, I'm just outputting the same output that was there. I'm just outputting it one at a time. It just doesn't look like it. I could if I wanted. So I could say get child items already has a recurse functionality built into it for this purpose, but I could say get child item. Yes. How can you just how can you capture? So you just want mode. Okay. So in this case, since we have folders, we're going to use an example from earlier. That gives us 1, right? Or another popular way, it is an array. I get the same thing, right? So that gives me 1. Hold. But I got 1, not 15 that I'm going to go do this on. So that's 1. Get member. Name, member type is, yeah. Now, this is going to just the property. Before I go here, you can do that filter. I'm going to do everything. Okay, this tells you every single thing about a system.io.directory info. That is what a folder is in .NET world. PowerShell is .NET, right? It really is. That is the object you are dealing with when you are dealing with a folder, is a system.io.directory info. Does. You just don't see all of them.
Overwrite that behavior, like what he did here, where he said, I want you to return get members default. Tells you all the stuff.
Yep.
So that means, so like a good way to think about it would be, this would be an unintelligible nonsense. If this is what you got back. Right? Sure. You got back all of this information for every single file. You would be able to parse it.
Yes.
So you pick like the top most important. You can reselect that yourself. For your outputs.
Yep. And typically, they're going to make the default output fit on the screen, right? So sometimes, but that is usually so. So if you want to see all the properties, like, yeah, hey, I want to access last access time, or last access or last write time, those are here, right? So the last time somebody touched this file is here as a property. So notice these are properties. Note properties are also there. The difference between a note property and a property. Yes, via PowerShell. So if you create, there's object types, right, which we haven't really gotten into too much yet. Yeah, so it's, yeah. So note if you do notice, look at all of the note properties, they're all PS. They're all added. Property and method are from .NET. Yep.
The other way to get that would be recursive.
I'm just curious. I had a couple of use cases where I was attempting to do that when I found different ways of solving the problem. Again, it's one of those. I've done a lot of unrestricted computer PowerShell.
Right.
I don't know how things work, right? Well, I want to be able to make an arbitrary guy call based on the properties that come back. I want to take different actions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, and potentially you might want to look at the properties and go, do the properties contain mode? The word mode,
Exactly.
right? Oh, okay, yes it does. Now in this case, it doesn't matter that there's 25 or 5, it's still in there. Yes. And based upon, if you're just looking at properties, if you're also looking for, if you want to actually look at it, that type is available. So folders. Oh, it's because I have to do it here. Isn't it? Jesus, thank you, at .NET. Base type. That's that same thing. So if I say this dot base type, there's times, there's days. Base type is going to be the actual item that I'm working with, right? So that is the type of, and I went into it, base type dot name. Process info. So if you had something where you were getting back different data types, potentially you could look at something like this. But again, that
So that really answers my question.
One thing I want to point out that Ken was talking about was you can run arbitrary .NET.
Yeah.
You can access all kinds of .NET properties to have the object. So he ran, he picked the first item out of the array and then all the get type method on it. And he doesn't get somewhere here, you can see it pop up.
Yeah. So if I do this, see these methods? Those are all .NET methods. If there are times where we've accessed certain things, forget what it was, if it was AD or Power, it's Exchange, certain things where there wasn't a commandlet specifically written to do exactly what we wanted to do. However, it's here. It's in the object. It's a method in .NET. So even though I have a function, or even though I have an object, I have all of these methods, these functions that are part of it. They're not commands from PowerShell, but they are functions. So there's been times where folder.getFiles, what do you expect that to return? Well, files is going to get me get files, a whole bunch of stuff. So let's see. If I said this dot, so remember I'm on Choco. This is .NET. There's the files that are in that folder. I didn't run PowerShell, I ran .NET on the object because I'm getting a .NET object. Sir. Yeah. Yeah, it's
There's no, when you set that first, there's nothing there that lets you say, in order to get to that, you have to do a query to get the actual service object back. And then once you have it, you make all the methods change.
yeah.
So there are times where like it's just not exposed yet, like nobody's on that order. And you web wrap would make it easier for yourself.
Right up. Yeah, so there's times where you'll need that. So what Michael was saying for people on the call is there are times like specifically setting startup types or setting certain things about services, especially like the account that a service starts with, or potentially whether it runs interactive or not, or certain things like that aren't exposed yet, or in certain versions now. Obviously, as new versions of Windows PowerShell comes out, they get there. You're at .NET. Anytime you've got, for the most part, a command that returns something, you've got an object from .NET. Do a get member, there's all kinds of shit you can do beyond PowerShell, because you're really running .NET in a scripted language. PowerShell is just .NET interpreted, not compiled. Uh-huh. Invoke REST method, yep. It returns an object. It returns a serialized, it returns data, first off, right? In your body. So if you do an invoke REST method, it's going to return data. That data is in a format of JSON. When you tell it convert from -JSON, it will convert that into an object. Now, here's the weird thing. Because that is a object that is created out of thin air, a folder is a very specific type. It exists on the file system as a known type definition. The data you get from an API has no idea, so it creates a custom object, but it is a custom object. Yes. So when you do the convert from -JSON, it is a PS custom object. It is a custom object created in PowerShell. A good example is when I gave that one on the API stuff. When invoke REST method doesn't work and you have to use a web client, system, nope, new.
objects of it.
So, what you're kind of wanting to do is to run
I'm not sure that I understand.
I will, I'll.
Okay.
show you.
So one example of this, Mr. Shawn, thanks, sir. So an example of this, new web client, okay? What did I just do in PowerShell? I did not do PowerShell. I did .NET. New object in PowerShell is .NET. It is not PowerShell. It's a PowerShell command, but it instantiates a .NET object. If you go look up on Microsoft right now, system.net.web client, that is a Microsoft .NET object class. That class, WebC, or WC, if I run get member, has the same thing we just looked at. It has properties, it has methods, it has events. Events are different. Those are really .NET. Those are like for asynchronous shit. However, if I wanted to do something, here's all the things I can do with a web client. These are not commands in PowerShell, they're commands in .NET. So if I wanted to download a string, it's a method. It takes these arguments. Here it is defined. So that is what, when you start dealing with new objects and you get objects back, which commandlets return objects, those are types, you're getting full .NET objects and classes. And a lot of those have methods in and of themselves. So, yes, sir. Yeah, go for it.
So we're talking PowerShell.
Yep. No, you don't. You don't care at all about any of this. All you care about is, how do I access this stuff? And can I get to what I need, right? So if you go, look, I have this web client and I need to download a string from a file, right, or something. Tab complete, just like commands, just like everything else, right? So there's string, put in a URL, hit enter. I got a string that was the website, whatever it returned. Choco, chocolatey installs this way. You're using .NET, you're using PowerShell, it doesn't matter, but understanding that really what you're doing and what people have done with commandlets, it's just wrapping .NET. It really is underneath the hood. There are some commandlets, a lot of the Microsoft commandlets that aren't written with PowerShell. They're written with C#, compiled, put on your system, and they look like a commandlet. So it doesn't matter. They're really interchangeable. The last one, switch. So how many of us know switch? You, yeah. So if this, or else if, don't do that. Use a switch. Now I'm going to show you something where, let's see if I have a, do I have a, okay, so I do have types, but I think, I'm going to go to this because I have an example of my switch, or in my insanity. First off, I'll get to my string format. Switch. Okay, don't look, Michael. This is the weirdest usage case of a switch. However, it has come in handy so many times, and people look at it and go, huh, I'm switching true. I'm not switching on a variable. And the reason I'm doing this is because I can put different equalities inside of my different switch statements. Now, the reason that is, and that works, is because each of those equates to a true or false statement. So when I utilize a switch statement inside of PowerShell, typically you're going to have a variable that is something you're looking at different values, right? environment, dev, test, prod, something like that. However, if you have disparate pieces of information that you're trying to programmatically control, you can do something like this. There's some caveats. It will actually execute each block where it is true in PowerShell. If you only want it to only do one, the first one it runs across, then break after each of those. Again, that's just something I've run into, but it does actually work. One of the last statements that I've just recently found that I think is super awesome. This comes a little bit from Python and a little bit from string.format and .NET. If you ever have problems and your PowerShell looks absolutely ugly piecing together a string and a variable and a string and a variable, or you put a variable in a string. So for a good example is, where's my AD? I'm just going to say $U is my user equals get AD user Maglio K. So there's all my stuff. So why didn't that work? And why do I have .name in my string after the word? What? But yeah, so PowerShell is weird with variables like this. Notice how the whole variable isn't green. Yeah, so if you want to do this correctly in this syntax, you would actually have to do this crazy crap, which a lot of people do. That works. Or some people will just take this and do this, and then they'll do plus, and then they'll do u.name. Well, you get weird things like this that happen. I have found there's inconsistencies across. Sometimes you get double spaces. You're like, not what I want. So when in doubt, hello there. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're just arbitrary numbers of the elements you're going to replace. -F for string format or just format, and the variable. In this case, it doesn't matter. If I had 2, I'd say u dot and the next variable. In this case, I only have 1. Oh, shush. I understand. There. Right host, I'm passing it an argument. I have to qualify my whole argument because I'm putting a statement in there. So a lot of the times this comes in handy. Yes, sir. What's left? Yeah, have them hold off for just a second. They wouldn't mind. So this is one of the cool things, the format. I've recently more learned about this and utilized it to all hell now because it just makes code a lot cleaner. So that's the, that's the syntax, the -F string format. Super helpful, love it. This is Mr. Mike. This is the switch that I said. I know. Like, what the hell? You're doing a switch on a true. Trust me. There are times where it actually is really helpful. Again, this is my insanity of commands that work. And I've done this in .NET quite a few times. Again, it's one of those things that it's not but it does make you think outside the box, is that, look, you can use these commands and they do work exactly how you write them. They're intended to work one way, and as long as you write them to work in that same way, it's outside the box. So this is what we were talking about, JSON. This is where I absolutely hate export of Excel. Now, CSV, go to JSON, invest, learn, and do everything in JSON. Almost every API is JSON. Talking from one machine to another, from one command to another works better with JSON. Yes. Yes.
CSV, you'll only get if something you're working on has a property.
Like a distribution list has members.
Right, you won't be able to get any of that.
Yep.
Based on
Yes. So you can have a distribution list and the members, and it all be readable as a single object. And when you convert it to or from, you get a full object that has members dot, and I have an array. I have each individual member as an item in that object. So super helpful, really, really useful. JSON is awesome. Classes, this could be a whole, and I wish there was some more love. It could be a whole session. I just started, not just, but I've recently used them much more effectively in the latest, but they're not 100% ready for prime time, but they're getting there. This is, like I was talking about, that there are ways that Microsoft builds classes in .NET and full objects. We're getting there, right? So the progression is you kind of start with PowerShell and you start running things, and you're a guy who runs through and you start running one-liners right at the command line. And then you start using pipe, and you can pipe this command to this command to this command and accomplish some tasks. Once you start understanding that, you start adding logic, right? You start adding your conditional statements, your for loops, your ifs, your thens, your switches, and you end up with a script. Now, maybe that script doesn't have parameters, it's hard-coded. You right-click, you run as PowerShell, and off it runs, right? Or you open it in the ISE, and you hit run, one of the two. After that, you start turning things into functions, right? So as we start beginning and you go from there, you start actually taking these scripts as a script and breaking them into more modular pieces as functions. Once you have functions, you then categorize those into the same types of things that go together, technologies potentially, and you end up with a module. The idea is that as you build beyond modules, you end up into classes, which are full on. I don't have these disparate modules. I have a whole class that has a functionality, a data store, all these types of things. A function does something and returns. A class is a whole entity that lives, right? So that's where things are going. It's not there yet, but they're fun to play with. And you can create like, or like, hey, I'm gonna have to store stuff in an array or a hash table or JSON classes. You get to make your own shit, your own properties, and store stuff in those properties. So it's kind of neat. It's crazy, but it's neat. That's it. I skipped over types, but if we could have a whole class probably on nothing but types. But it's here in this spreadsheet. Typing, I'll hit it very quickly. Typing literally just, you don't have to do it. PowerShell will type objects correctly, except I want to hit one slide because I have flat. So I know this is probably super hard to read in the back. Sorry, Jeff. I can. Isn't that a whole flock of these? Read between the lines. Yeah, got it. So automatic type conversion, PowerShell. It what? Like A and B and A times B? Not so much. And that's correct, the top line. You would expect that to fail because those are strings and you can't multiply two strings together. However, what just happened in the second? What? 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 Yeah, except guess what? B is still a string. Yeah, exactly. Because you're like, huh? So PowerShell really tries to help you out, but sometimes it puts you over. So do be careful. If you really want to hard set a variable, type it. Its types are done with brackets. So again, here's the basics. There's a lot more, but here's the basics. No, not automatic, but it will help you when you go to store data. So if you try to shove a string, well, no, it'll actually type that. It won't actually automatically cast it into the int. Right. So, and there's times where casting is part of typing, kind of, you want a result to ensure it returns a Boolean, not a 1 or a 0. So you can do that. You can cast the same way you would type, it's just on the other side of the equals. So again, it's here, there's flat. And simple syntax is type variable right next to it, smashed right against the $sign. The really helpful thing about this, especially with .NET objects, while you have get member, while you have other things, you get .intelligence. So if I say, this thing isn't the code, the ISE PowerShell isn't determining that this object is a string, and I know string has a .replace on it, if I hard type it as a string, it will know replace is part of it. So a real good example in 2 seconds, when we were looking at the for each folder in folders, which, yeah, I just screwed up. I don't have folders set anymore. Yeah, all of you. Do I still have this set? I do. Okay, folder right now is a variant. It's a random. It's just going to cast it to whatever the hell it thinks it is. However, I could. Do I remember what this is? Yeah, I do. System.io. File. Directory file system. Yes, thank you. Damn it. Do what? Yeah. Damn it. Directory info. Okay. Where'd it go? There it is. I should have known it was directory info. Yes. Sure. Oh, missing variable name after for each. So you can, whatever. So typing a variable actually. What here? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Here? Oh, yeah. Yeah, all right. Nope. Cannot convert remove snare to the file info to, oh, yeah, because it's not a, yep. Because actually this is, yeah, fine. Not a good example. However, typing something will help. Yeah, cool. To an array of strings. Oh, yeah. So each object in .NET has a toString method that when you do that, when you just say convert toString, it runs the toString command. So same thing as you say object.name, same type of thing. So again, it's a way to cast objects. If I was dealing with something like this where I had a variable, typically if I create a new object, so back in my, get out of the way. Holy, this, nope. That, I don't do this. In almost all my code, I will do that. Because then WC is for sure, whether I've initialized it and I've ran this piece of code or I'm debugging it in the ISE or something like that, it knows that WC is a web client. And if I go WC dot, I get all the methods, get all the properties. That's me. So I type my variables for the most part. Unless I know they're going to be variable in one, but especially objects that I know are .NET objects, why leave it to variable chance? I know exactly what I'm initializing. Why not type it as the same exact object? Because I've seen where ISE, or not so much code, but the ISE can get wonky on this if it doesn't know. Visual Studio Code does a pretty damn good job of interpreting the objects. Yep. Jeff. Yeah. How do I use it? Yeah. No. So you're going to hate this. No, and if you really want to do that, I can share. I found and stripped it off. It is ugly. I do not support it. However, it works. I did not write it, but I got it to work correctly. No, we have it as part of our automation, and the problem is our users are not going to understand how to open up a CSV correctly in Excel. If it is, they open it up as just one column, they're like, oh my god. So yeah, so the problem is that how do you get an actual XLSX Excel document, right? An actual XLSX. Never install Office or Excel on your servers. Bad people that suggest this on the internet. Just install Excel and do it through the COM object. No. Yeah, no. So here's what we've done. There was some code out there I found. I ripped it apart, pieced it back together to make sure it works. What it does is that, if you don't know, Office documents are a zip file. So if you actually change an extension on any Office document to .zip, it's actually a zip file. And there's like 4 or 5 files in that zip file because that's an Open Office document standard. Like Open Office, the application, there's a standard for it. So this PowerShell commandlet that I found takes data that you would normally export to CSV, and you just say export -XLSX, and it creates a whole Open Office document for you ready to go, and it's actually an XLSX. That opens up exactly like you would expect it to. Yes, sir. Import Excel? Have you looked at that? Go look at what it uses. Go look at what it's wrapping some other DLL that, yeah, no, it wasn't because it didn't work. Nope. I do. But no, there is a, when we looked at that, there was a problem with that approach for us. Is it requires a third-party DLL that I don't know what that DLL does, and that DLL is not open source, from what I could tell. Maybe it is. So it was one of those things like, I really don't want to install a DLL on my system just to write a damn Excel document. I know it's there. I know it's on the PowerShell gallery. I looked at it and I said, no. Yes. I don't Yes, if they write them themselves. But this was literally, if you look at it, as a third party that they did not write, that they are just consuming. So if that ever changes or breaks, I have a problem with modules that wrap other like a module that consumes a third-party DLL that I have no idea what that DLL is or works. We just had a problem with that. Yeah. So that's where we were like, and we found this. We tried it and it worked. And it's literally straight PowerShell. There's no DLL. There's no nothing. It literally is just a whole shit ton of XML, and it outputs, and it's not great, but it works. XML. Yeah. So again, we did find it in our search. It is another published module out there, whatever that was, but it's a problem. It has been always. There is an export to HTML. If your users don't mind getting a web page in email instead of a CSV, there is that option too, but that's kind of, I mean, it's very basic. It just exports a table in HTML. But again, it depends on how they're consuming it or how they want it. I mean, visually it's pretty and it looks exactly like you want it to. Is it in Excel? No. There is export to HTML as well. So a lot of the stuff that when I started and I help other people start is obviously having a problem or having something to go do is super helpful, right? A lot of the stuff that you're going to start with is going to be, if you're not Mr. Piquel and thrown into talking with APIs, that's like a couple of steps that he skipped. Hopefully you're dealing with commandlets, right? You're dealing with getting stuff from Active Directory or Exchange or other things that are well written for PowerShell. Those are things where you can do a lot of gets, right? That would be my thing, is get familiar with gets, filtering, start looking at how you start incorporating logic. Stop writing PowerShell one-liners. I get it. They're elegant, they're cool, but when you go to a script and you go to a function, one-liners are absolute shit. Because if you have 15 commands in one line, you can't debug any of it. So while it's elegant, and I agree, it works really well, that's left for the command line. Don't write it in a script. Break every single part out to an individual line, to an individual object. I don't care that it's more verbose. It's documented. It makes more sense to the next person coming behind you, right? That's my next step, is go beyond the command line, start writing out individual. There's no reason why you can't there's no reason to use a pipe in a script, other than maybe the where clause. For each, like a single pipe is okay. But if you start going 15 pipes deep in a script, I particularly have problems with that, because it is not readable, it's not debuggable. If you have a break on that one line, it's nightmare. And half the people, unless they wrote it and understand every single command in that 15 piped command, good luck having them follow it. So unless they're at your level of understanding. So if a beginner comes behind you and looks at that, they're going to go, fuck, I don't know, I'm done. So the syntax of PowerShell. Perfect.
Secretly, Mike Shepard is also going to do
He wrote a book?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He's literally written books on how.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, this one. I also recommend.
Yeah. PowerShell what? PowerShell for Linux is PowerShell core, right? Getting the what was it? You said January 10th?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they don't have like really good translation for right now, like because you can't rely on your service management like one API. Right, so there's some that's another stories, but a lot of the other good stuff.
Yeah.
Plenty of commands.
Yep.
So like my work now,
Yep. Our no, service is one of those. Process you can. Yes. Yes. You can get process. That's fine. It's too many different commands for get service. Yep. Yeah, that's what they're working for. Maybe. It might. So to give you an idea, yeah, to give you an idea, I think Windows, so there's two, Windows PowerShell and PowerShell core, right? But PowerShell. Windows PowerShell has something like 2,800 or 3,000 commands. PowerShell core has something like 600 or 800. Oh.
Oh, it's got PowerShell.
It has a PowerShell extension.
Okay, but the question is, you're saying it's like PowerShell. Well, the shell, is it core or is it? Well, I do a lot of my development on my Mac or on the Linux box running through code. And the stuff I'm doing is really API calls, right? So let's look at that.
So
Yeah.
what's neat, so VS Code is
Right.
You have included in it an integrated terminal. You can change that terminal's shell to whatever's available. So like it'll pick a same default for your files. So like my Mac is default. I don't know if actually default. But it's D shell right now. Right? Okay. I open up terminal, it opens up my default D shell.
Okay, and I get that, I get mashed up, right? And then I negotiate into my workplace or workspace area, and I go into my PowerShell directory. If I click on PowerShell script, PS1, changes to PowerShell on the bottom. Because
It opened additional.
yeah. So if I did install PowerShell on my Mac, that wouldn't do that? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So as part of the reason that, so we have a conflict. What happens is that it says, when I initialize this extension, also open up the PowerShell. Always.
Always. We keep, yeah. Oh, Lord. Woohoo. Yeah, true.
Another great answer is, so that's nice. SSH will very soon use.
What? Doing it first? What? The Windows, the SSH?
Yeah, open SSH is an option.
Yes, it is. And we tried using it for our Cisco ACL automation. We tried using it. However, Cisco SSH puts a banner at the top when you SSH, and it screwed up OpenSSH and PowerShell's ability to log in because it thought the banner was my username. Nope. I know. No, but I do need to do things like that more so.
When I started playing with PowerShell and I found it right to have mail address, all breakers would have dance on my desk when I saw the correct. So I don't know if you guys do a lot of scripting or you guys mail address your scripts. It Perl do a lot of little things to handle that. Or there's on reference. The params in PowerShell, I just type them and it's either blank or what I want the default to be, and then it's done. It's not done. It's great.
Yep.
Yeah. They're all there.
I'm going to close down the feed.
From a certain perspective,
Thank you. Bye-bye.